have 2 nights. I mean, I also enjoyed, back when Triple H was in charge of NXT, and NXT was its own animal where they did that night before WrestleMania or like a Survivor Series or whatever the big events were. And sometimes those takeovers had better matches than WrestleMania did because it was just the styles of the competitors and everything that was going on that you got super excited about that. And then the next night was WrestleMania, which you knew you were getting yourself into because NXT almost, to me, back then seemed like a bigger indie, but they're all under the WWE umbrella, so they're still trying to learn that style. But Triple H is such a fan of the, pro wrestling in general that he kind of let them do whatever the hell they were doing because it was under his watch. So if he was going to get in trouble for it, he'd rather take the bullet than they would. Yeah. This is the way I thought about it. I don't know how true that actually is. But to me, WrestleMania, 2 nights, I get it money-wise, sponsorship-wise, attendance-wise. It makes sense. I get it. But as a wrestling fan, I enjoyed having the access and availability of watching all this other wrestling, maybe also on Saturday, as opposed to now, well, if I'm going to try to watch anything before WrestleMania night 1, I got to try to catch it and then travel over to wherever the, WrestleMania is going to be.
Mm-mm. I guess when we're saying all this, I guess I think, well, would having 2 days of Christmas make Christmas any better? Would
Right.
it make Christmas not as special? And I think ultimately it would ruin Christmas. So yeah, it's a special event like WrestleMania. I don't want 2 Super Bowls. I know it's different. I know this is different, but yeah, I guess I could see it. Who's the main event? Well, there's 2 main events. No, there
True.
isn't. No, there isn't, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's 2 main events. The main event is whatever goes on last, and that's night 2's main event. That's what I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but it all sounds like a semantic argument to me. Main event is what goes on last. So yeah, I guess you've talked me into it, John. One night it is.
Well, they've already dug their heels in. They're making too much money. They can brag about the attendance now. There's no way they're going back to one night. Even though we saw, Wrestle Kingdom, they did 2 nights and now they're back to one night. So maybe one day. Yeah. I think this year's, was back to one night, and I believe they're going back to one night again next year. Cause then they also do New Year's Dash, which is their Raw after WrestleMania, but it's always, there's at least always some surprise return or debut, and I think it's always great.
Mm-hmm.
And this year will be the last year Kevin Kelly is doing Wrestle Kingdom and New Year's Dash before we have a new English commentator out of this great state of Texas. So that's
right.
It's going to be bittersweet for Kevin Kelly to not be the English voice of New Japan. So I'm excited for him to really showcase what he can do here in AEW, but I am going to miss him, commentating for New Japan.
Oh, is that so? Kevin's moving on to AEW.
He is. It's also a travel situation. He kind of promised his wife, he was like, okay, I'm done traveling to Japan, multiple times a year, being away from the family. He's going to, spend more time with his family, which I completely understand, working for the most part one night a week. Yeah, it makes sense.
Or 2 nights a week, depending on the tapings.
Exactly. Or if there's a pay-per-view, and depending on if he's got to be there or not.
So he's going to see his wife about as much. Oh, no. I hope it works. Who's taking over for him?
His name is Walker. Oh, man, I talked to him last night at the Revolver show. I feel bad I don't know his last name. Walker Stewart.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a very nice young man who works a lot of the independents here in Texas. As I mentioned last night, I was at the Wrestling Revolver show that was here, and he was doing commentary for them. So, I think he's gonna do a great job. He's got a great voice, very nice guy, and I think he's gonna do good things for New Japan. And obviously this is a giant step up for him, and I think he's gonna be doing very well.
Yeah, good. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah. Now, I kind of touched that you've bounced around everywhere being in the Indies, Ring of Honor, TNA before it was Impact, WWE multiple times, seeing how they all work, do you feel that it's been better to travel and learn from different places or kind of stay in one place and learn? I know you touched on, going to WWE immediately, you realize that, okay, this isn't some make-believe place that I can one day hopefully grind out and get here. But do you feel that going to those other places really helped you kind of hone your craft and, learning the different styles? Because WWE, you're learning for the most part camera work, how to, you're playing to the crowd, but you're also playing to that camera, to the people that you aren't seeing, as opposed to like Ring of Honor, they had a hard camera, but you're for the most part playing to the crowd. Impact, I think, was, obviously more WWE-ish in that sense. But do you feel that like I said, traveling around and learning different styles was more beneficial for you?
I guess it's what I aspired to be since I first saw Dynamite Kid. I wanted to be one of those guys. I wanted to be a guy who spent time in Japan, in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, in the UK. I wanted to be a legitimate wrestler. And so when I found out that guys like him, guys like Chris Benoit, guys like Eddie Guerrero, guys like Dean Malenko, guys like Chris Jericho, that group of guys who are the serious wrestlers, they've been everywhere, and that's what I wanted to be. Now, if you stick around in one place long enough, you could also wind up being Shawn Michaels, who I think is I think he's perfection when it comes to the American style of wrestling. If we're talking about what today's or the style of storytelling and selling, I think Shawn Michaels is a maestro, and maybe that can only come from perfecting one style over the years. Whereas for me, I guess I'm more of a master of none. I suppose, yeah.
That's not a bad thing. And I love that you mentioned all the guys that, were those road warriors when it did come to pro wrestling that did go everywhere, because I genuinely believe that you do need to go everywhere, learn all the styles, learn, like we talked about earlier, how to work in front of a crowd in Mexico, how to work in front of a crowd in Japan, how to work a crowd in England. If you make it to Australia, that crowd's going to be different than the other ones. If you get lucky enough to wrestle in Africa, I've talked to PJ Black, and he said that he had to go other places too, because, as much as there was a good scene in South Africa, he had to, he feels blessed that he did go to England and learn a craft over there and then go around the same way.
Yeah, I agree. He would have been floundering if he stayed out there, because I don't know if anybody's been discovered out of Africa. There's been great African wrestlers. Kofi Kingston's from Africa, but he was, he's from Boston. He wasn't scouted in Africa.
Right.
So it's quite hard. A little easier now if you're, let's say, the strongest man in the world or the fastest lady in the world and you happen to live in Africa. You might get scouted, but as a pro wrestler, it's a little tricky.
True. I mean, I'm a fan of mixed martial arts as well, and we're seeing so many amazing fighters come out of. They are Nigerian, but they're not getting discovered in Nigeria. They're getting discovered over here, or they're getting discovered over in Europe or something like that. So, it's weird that Africa is the biggest continent, but we're still not. It's not talked about as much as people aren't being discovered out of that continent. But I don't know. I don't know why.
Well, I think it's, maybe it just hasn't caught on there yet. There's this Japanese wrestler named Takaiwa. I love him. That's how I drive with that. And I remember years ago watching sumo wrestling on TV with him. And he explained to me, he goes, well, once Americans like sumo wrestling, Japan is finished. It's just a matter of Americans, you guys get so big and fat and strong. So I think if Nigeria, I believe it's the fastest growing country in the world. I think it's going to be the largest population by 2050. And I think they've got some phenomenal athletes out there. No doubt you'd have to anywhere. I think, with all the investments, it's interesting when WWE investing in China or India. I hadn't heard of talks of Africa, but it seems like that,
Yeah.
that would be a genius place to go, completely untapped.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, it just makes sense to go there because you're going to have, India makes sense again because there's over 1 billion people in the country on its own. And there, I mean, obviously there's so much money when it comes to there. China, obviously, again, there's so much money there, so it makes sense to go there. When they started the WWE UK and they had a training facility there, I was like, okay, that makes sense. I imagine the next one would probably be Japan. And then if I had my way, like we're talking about now, I'd go to Africa because again, how many people from Africa are we really talking about? And why would we not showcase, all these different, cultures and put a spotlight on them for America? Because Americans, when it comes to Africa, kind of, we think it's all safari land and, we don't put as much time and effort into trying to figure out what the different countries of Africa are or what is even happening over there.
I mean, I think just because it's not in the news, it's not impacting us as far as trade partners or any of that stuff goes. Just like, wouldn't know about what's going on with our neighbors in South America. Good
Sure.
luck, getting people to figure out what country is which. I'm going to fail. I certainly ain't going to get 100%. I'll be real proud of myself if I got 75% right. Untapped markets. I think Brazil would be genius too.
Yeah.
But I think that might be something they have talked about. But Africa, I think that's, wow. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Maybe one day. Well, maybe us putting it out in the universe now is gonna make it happen later.
The wheels are in motion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about you started your own promotion, but you transitioned to being a trainer at some point. What have you learned or what have you loved most about teaching the next generation?
I like when they are hungry. If as long as a student is hungry or motivated, that wants to be there, then I've got plenty of patience for them. If they don't understand something or they're having a hard time, physically doing it, but they've been paying attention, they're trying their hardest, then I'm happy to help. And then when they do get it, it helps me understand wrestling more because I'm looking at things that, I didn't realize, turn your heel this way. But I guess so. All that to say is when I find somebody who's hungry to learn, and then I'm able to teach them, it makes me feel like I have a purpose and it's being fulfilled. And as small as that may be, because it's just helping somebody learn a trick, how to entertain somebody for a few seconds. It's a very nothing, but it's still my something. And so I like that.
And then I imagine that when they have that face of like, oh, this is what I imagine, that is very rewarding as well.
It is. And when they, one thing that's really hard for people to do is to open up. And when I say open up, like go out there, make your eyes big and wide and stare people in the eyes when you're out there playing. Play big and don't be afraid. Just on the show, when you're out there. And I'm a nervous, scared dude, so I get it. You have to be able to snap out of this into this other thing. But when you see that bashful kid, embody this other persona and do that, like, wow, it feels good, and they feel good. And I was talking with this kid at the show I did last week in Queens, or 2 weeks ago, and he's smiling ear to ear afterwards, and he's telling me, he just had his second match. Yeah. And there's no other feeling like this in the entire world. Like, yeah, man. Like, tell me something I don't know, kid. I've been doing this for 25 years, but that's right. And that's it. There's no feeling like it. And to see how happy this kid was, and that's it. I don't know. It's all the people I know is through wrestling.
Yeah. I love watching. So I've been lucky enough to work for a local company